One's life begins to change when their desires transform into concrete actions. You're listening to the Desire to Be podcast, where your desires for your life and relationships become your mastery. I'm your host, Devora Goldberg, and thank you for joining. Welcome back to another show of the Desire to Be podcast. What does it look like when parents reclaim their sleep? I'm asking for those moms who are struggling with burnout and are searching for tools on how to re-energize, starting with well-deserved shut-eye for them and their little ones. Today, I'm speaking with Sarah Nagar, a pediatric sleep coach and founder of A Little Sleep. She's going to unravel the mysteries of restful nights and the fundamental impact of sleep on parental vitality and child development. She's about to share with us what she considers to be the most common sleep training myths and her tailored solutions to moms who are almost ready to throw in the towel. So welcome, Sarah, to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And of course, I love talking about everything sleep related. So I'm excited to get into it and answer all the questions and just chat about it a little bit.
Absolutely. So to start off, tell my audience a bit about yourself.
So I'm Sarah. I'm a mom of four. I have three boys and a little girl. Currently living in Florida. We've been all over the world. I am, like Devora said, a sleep coach. I was a new mom and I had no idea what the heck I was doing. And like everybody had warned me beforehand that I would never sleep again. And I internalized it. I was like, okay, whatever, we'll see. Okay. And as time went by, it sort of became my reality. I was not sleeping. My baby was not sleeping. My husband wasn't sleeping because we were not sleeping. It was just a disaster all around. And to make a long story short, I sleep trained. I learned about sleep training, which is a long story in itself for another time. And I found myself again. And the reason I got into this profession is because I wasn't myself. I wasn't feeling my best self. I wasn't functioning at a great capacity, optimally. I wasn't functioning normally. And I felt like, okay, everyone's telling me this is normal, fine, but it didn't feel normal. So I lived like that normally for a few months and until I realized like, no, this can't be normal. I have to make a change here, which is when I discovered sleep training and I read and I learned and I sleep trained my son. And then long story short, again, I found myself throughout the years helping families, loving helping families, being so like happy and excited about them sleeping again. And that it just became a hobby, which became a business, which became a passion. And you see how that was sort of like a domino effect of how I got into it to begin with, because I wanted to be able to help moms feel their best and realize like, hey, you don't have to be sleep deprived as a new mom. You can have a different experience.
What I love about that is that just because society or other moms or other relatives are telling us this is the norm, just fit yourself into this box called norm as a young mom, you're like, I know that I could be feeling better, but I don't.
Right.
And you went on your own journey to find out what that is and how you can make life as a mom work for you, your husband, your child. And then the fascinating thing is that you get to bring this journey to other people because you probably see their ups and their downs and their
Yeah.
frustrations and bringing your own empathy to the story because you were there and you know what it was like.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, we talk about motherhood as the most amazing experience that anyone will ever have. And it is in so many ways, but it's not amazing when you're not sleeping and when you are 24/7 tending to a baby who's not sleeping. And then you wonder, like, this is supposed to be the most amazing experience. Why am I not feeling that way? And some people live that way. They internalize it, it becomes their reality, and other people don't accept that. They're like, no, there has to be something much more amazing than sleepless nights and, all that stuff. So that's where I was sort of on the hunt to figure out, like, how can I make my life truly amazing as a mom, as a new mom, for sure, as a new mom. So
I've heard people say that they refuse to do sleep training because that means their child is going to scream all night.
right.
So it's kind of like a one-way thing. Like if you're going to be sleep training, you're going to have a screaming toddler for hours or baby.
Right. That's a good question. Probably the biggest encumbrance that people face is the crying, right? It's the biggest like deterrence. No one wants to hear it, naturally as moms, like for us to say, oh, we're just going to leave our babies to cry. It's unnatural. It's not what we do naturally. So, that's a great question. Your baby, first of all, should not be screaming and crying all night long. And I always tell clients straight off the bat, if your baby, with whatever method we use, okay, if your baby is up an entire night screaming, we're doing something wrong. Your baby's need was not met, or we're doing something we're going about it the wrong way, right? Is there going to be crying? Yes. There's a lot of myths around the crying, which we can get into, in another question or in a little bit. But I always say that crying does not equal cry it out, right? Cry it out is a method of extinction where you say sayonara and I'll see you in the morning, and you don't go in, you don't check on your baby, you're not present, you don't offer any sort of comfort. And that's not what we do with sleep training. So are they going to cry? Yes. I just explain in short that it is an expression of frustration, exhaustion. Your baby
Mhm.
wants to sleep. I always tell parents, your baby wants to sleep. They just don't know how to do it on their own. So
Right.
they are frustrated because of it. Like any child learning any new skill, there's often tears. Even adults, sometimes we cry when we learn something new, if it's really hard or really frustrating. And this is the same thing. So if babies start out in life and they don't know how to fall asleep on their own, they're going to cry about it. And we can be there to help them through it. We can be present. We can be hands-on. We can hold their hand and walk them through that. And they're still going to cry, but it's how we deal with the crying. And no, when doing this, they're not going to cry a whole night long. They should not cry a whole night long. I always preface that straight off the bat. Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's like a whole new context that I've heard. But I want you to take me back a couple more steps and tell my audience what are some of the complaints that you hear when you first have that initial consultation with the moms? What are their pain points that they're feeling?
Right. So their pain points are very interesting because they're on such different extremes of a spectrum of pain when you're thinking about pain, right? They're dealing with their own pain, the pain point of I'm exhausted, I'm not sleeping. I don't have time for myself. I don't have time for my spouse. And if there's other kids involved, I definitely don't have time for other kids. I don't have time for anything. That's a pain point. And then about the baby, they don't want to hear their baby crying. So that's also a pain point. They don't want to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know if it's right or wrong to deal with it. They don't know how to go about it. And it's very challenging for parents because that's a complaint. Like, I want to do this, but I don't want my baby to cry. So how do I go about it? And then a lot of parents don't do it because of that.
And I'm sure you have a method to the sleep training. You don't have to walk us through everything because I want people to understand that each situation must be so different. So you can't just have like a cookie cutter
Yeah, not at
scenario,
all.
but take us through some of the steps that you walk the parents through in sleep training their children.
Right. So just to backtrack a little, I sit with each family and we really go over their parenting style, their parenting philosophy to really create and curate something from scratch that's going to fit their needs. So I always say, you meet me halfway, I'll meet you halfway so that we can meet your baby halfway. It's
Mhm.
it's all about meeting halfway. And we will create something that's comfortable for the parents that they feel good about, because that's the most important thing, is that they feel good about what they're implementing, what they're learning. And what we do is there's different methods to choose from. I have parents decide, do you want to stay in the room with your baby? Are you comfortable leaving the room? And I walk them through what that looks like. So being in the room with your baby would mean you are pulling up a chair and you're sitting right next to your baby. You're offering comfort, crib side, you're able to touch them, and it's a slow, process. Some people call it a fading process or gradual fading, where you're sort of graduating out of the room. You're weaning your child off of your presence, and you can do that very slowly. That method takes a little bit of time. And even in that method, you need to customize per family. What are we doing to comfort your child in the process? And that looks like something totally different from one family to the next.
Mm.
One baby might love having their back rubbed, and one baby might scream their head off from it. So one baby might respond really well to you sitting there. So it's something that we gauge and we see how the progress is being made. We measure it from day to day to see like what changes need to be made, how to like continue with the progress if we're not making progress. What are we doing wrong that we're not making progress? And then there's methods of actually leaving the room where you're giving your child full independence, full space, full time to really figure it out on their own in the crib while you are also actively checking on them, going into that room, making sure that your baby is okay when you do that. It's called a comfort check or a pop in or a check in. There's so many different things people call it, but
Mm.
that's another way to do it. So, there's also different ways to do that, depending again on the parents', philosophies of sleep training and what they're comfortable with throughout the process.
What are some challenges that you face as a sleep specialist, perhaps even debunking some myths out there?
So, one challenge I would say is, like you said, debunking the myths. You cannot convince people of something that they are headstrong about or have very firm beliefs in.
Mm.
So, that's a challenge because when someone comes to me and wants to sleep train, it doesn't matter how much proof I give them. I can send them references, articles, data, research, you name it. And it's often never enough for parents, which is where I say, okay, I've done my part. I've given you all the info. Now it's in your hands. You decide what you want to do with it. So that's one. And then the other challenge I face is I feel I'm in a position where I'm telling parents that it's normal for their baby to cry. This is normal. This is even healthy, I sometimes say, which it is. And that's a conversation for another time. But for me to tell them that, knowing that it's such a pain point or a challenge for them to hear their child cry is challenging for me
Mhm.
because yes, it is okay for them to cry, within context, right? Depending on how we deal with it and stuff. But who am I to say, yeah, it's normal, it's natural, just let your baby cry? It doesn't feel good, even though it's
Mhm.
something that we have to do in order to get over it, in order to get through the sleep training. That's probably the second biggest challenge that I have.
And for parents who are still on the fence and they're like, I cannot handle any crying of my kids. But here you are, Sarah, you're saying it's okay, it's normal, and in some cases, it's even healthy. Walk us
Mhm.
through why you deem it healthy.
This is a very broad, loaded question, but I'll try to
Mhm.
answer it as short as possible. It's healthy because and you can apply this to any skill that you're teaching your child, toddler, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. It's healthy because when you give your child space to feel what they're feeling, to experience what they're feeling, while you're standing there supporting them, you're telling them it's okay. You have the tools to deal with this. You're actually acknowledging your child and saying, I acknowledge your frustration. I know this is really hard and difficult for you. I know that you're crying and that you're sad, but I'm here to help you. But I'm here to stand next to you. If we run right away and save them from the crying or do what we can to prevent it or stop it, we're not giving them a chance to tell us what they need or want or feel, but we're also not teaching them, we're not giving them a chance to learn. So we're kind of taking away that teaching opportunity that we have at that moment to say, I'm here teaching you and you can do this on your own and I'm here to help you. I'm going to give you the tools. Right. And I always compare it to like a toddler or a child riding a bike or dropping your toddler off at preschool. Right. They're not always going to be happy about it, but do we as parents stay the entire day to eliminate the tears and the unhappiness and the stress, I guess, that your child is feeling when they start school? No, at some point we have to leave and they'll be okay. And we need them to feel that also so that they can learn how to cope with it. And if we don't allow them to cry or feel frustrated or feel that upset that they're feeling, then they're also not learning how to cope with it. And they're also not, we're taking away the opportunity for them to even know that those feelings exist. So that's sort of like one, you know, one loaded response, I guess, of why it's healthy. We need to give them space and time. It's the only way for them to learn.
That makes total sense. And I love the analogy that you gave, which is the next step up after being an infant is when they start going to school. And many times we drop them off and they're wailing. Parents don't come
Mhm.
in and pick up their child and say, that's it, I'm going, I'm gone, I'm taking them out. We let
Right,
them cry it out with a teacher who is experienced to allow that child to
right,
have that space. And usually we'll come back at the end of the day and we're like, how long did they cry for? 2, 3 minutes, and they were fine.
exactly.
I recently heard that the different hours that we sleep at night, the different organs in our bodies are rejuvenating, especially the hours before 12 o'clock a.m. And the lack of sleep actually depletes certain organs functionally. What are your thoughts on this?
I love this question because it's one of those pieces of information or topics that people wouldn't really know about unless you like actively look it up or go read a book about sleep. And I obviously find it really fascinating, but it is true. So the hours from 8 p.m. to midnight are the most restorative hours of sleep that we get, and for sure our children. So with our children, it starts a little bit earlier because they're younger, they need a little bit more sleep. And as adults, that sleep starts a little bit later. And what
Mhm.
happens is you have about 4 hours of the deepest sleep, which is non-REM, slow wave, delta sleep, stage 3 sleep, whichever you want to call it. That happens in the first 4 hours of when you fall asleep from about 8 p.m. to midnight.
Mhm.
And it's the longest stage of sleep, and it's also the deepest stage of sleep. So the more you cut into that sleep and you remain awake, the less of it you have. And it's restorative. It's the stage of sleep that promotes growth, and it helps your body recover from the day, from all the stimulation and from everything. It promotes tissue repair, like overall growth in general. I won't go into too much detail because I can talk about it for an hour, but it's really the most restorative stage of sleep. And we need that. Kids need that for sure in order to function properly the next day. So the more you dip into that and they remain awake and you lack that sleep, the more they're going to feel it the next day. And you'll see it. You'll see it in their behavior. You'll see it in their demeanor. They'll probably be more clingy, more cranky.
Love that. What is the most rewarding aspect of what you do?
The most rewarding aspect of what I do is obviously getting babies and children to sleep, but it's giving parents their life back and giving, and there's so much to that because I always say, and I love this question so much because people sometimes think sleep training is just about sleep. It's just about sleep training your baby. It's just about teaching your baby how to sleep independently. But it's so much more than that because that rolls over into literally every single other aspect of your life. We
Mhm.
know as parents that having a baby means that, yes, they do often take over your life, and your life now becomes about your baby. So imagine if they're not sleeping, then you are literally catering 24/7 to that baby to try and figure out how to get him to sleep. And we want to try and make sure that as parents, yes, they do take over our lives in a good way, obviously, but that we also have our own lives. And when you teach them to sleep, when you know that you can put them down and go on a date with your husband, go out with your friends, go to work feeling, rested and happy, that for me is very rewarding to see that parents can have their lives back and to see that their lives can be so much more enhanced just by having their child sleep, and they don't realize what a huge difference it makes. And there's so much to it. They feel better about themselves, they have more time for each other.
Mhm.
It's everything.
So
So
you're really
that's
completing like a big picture. It's not just the sleep aspect, that there's the
yes,
quality of life for parents, child,
for
family,
sure.
etc. That's fantastic.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. If I could have taken back my whole paragraph and said it enhances quality of life, I would be done there. Yeah, quality of life for sure. Yeah, hands down. It's like the number one thing. And I love being able to restore that for people because it's a big deal, especially new moms who are just like hit in the face with this. And they often are just like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, yes, people warned me that I wouldn't sleep again, but there's just so much to it. And I like to be able to give them a different experience or help them change their experience for the better.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that it's empowering because I can just imagine that if one doesn't get that heavy sleep right before 12 o'clock, like you mentioned, those
Yeah,
4 hours, it might even have a ripple effect to other aspects of their lives. Like maybe someone's suffering from migraines or
sure.
backache, and they go to the doctor, they're like, you're fine, your blood work is good. And maybe all they need is that restorative sleep to help their body realign itself. So just understanding the importance of it and getting the parents to that proper sleep. I mean, you can't take their phones away from them. You don't know if they're going
Mhm.
to sleep with their phones in their hands, but you can at least educate and then empower them to make that right decision.
100%. I see it even with some of my kids. Like when they don't sleep well, certain kids have tendencies to be really jittery the next day and they can't focus properly. And I see it. And I see like, okay, you needed more sleep last night. Or, okay, you went to bed way too late last night. you could see very clearly how it affects them. So imagine babies who can't communicate that. They're going to cry. They're going to be really cranky. They're going to be clingy. They're not going to nap well. And it's just like this ripple effect of, that those side effects or symptoms of lack of sleep. And it definitely translates. And it spills over too, because catching up on sleep also takes time. So
It
that's a
does.
whole other topic in itself.
Yeah. If my kids go on a sleepover and they come back and I'm like, okay, tonight's an early night. The following day, they're like, why am I still tired? I'm like, well, we're playing
Yeah.
catch up now. We'll take a few days.
There's actually a science to that. It takes a few days. When you go to sleep, when you lose sleep at night, it takes a few days to recover from it. It's not like, oh, I'll go to sleep early the next night and I'll feel great the next morning. It bounces, it rolls over.
Yeah. Now, if any of my audience members want to reach out to you, how can they best do that?
They can text me on WhatsApp. I have a business number. They can reach me on Instagram. They can send me an email. I am cool with all those things. I check them constantly throughout the day. So you'll provide that info for them.
Yeah. And is there a promotion that you'd like to offer my audience today?
Yes, I'm going to give you guys 10% off of whatever sleep service you want, whatever you feel is good for you. And if you have questions about it, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. However, WhatsApp, Instagram, email, and I'd be happy to answer questions for you. I know that parents have a lot of questions when it comes to sleep training.
On the Desire to Be podcast, I like to hone in on the desires of my guests. What drives them to their calling? What drives them to making an impact on this world? What would you say, Sarah, is your desire for your personal and professional life?
Wow, that's a big question. So for my professional life, I think that, of course, it's about sleep. It's about helping families and all that stuff. But I really want to send a message to moms that they can have a very different experience than what we are told we're going to have. And they can have a different experience, a better experience, that they can go into motherhood feeling like it's not going to be, they want, like that they can go into motherhood feeling like they don't have to be anxious about it, right? And of course, there's things to be anxious about. It's new. And for the seasoned moms, it's not new, but it's an addition. It's just, there's more to do. But I feel like they need to know they don't have to be sleep deprived. They don't have to be functioning at half capacity or on survival mode. I think that's really important. And that makes me feel like, okay, I did my job. I feel good. I just sent this message to however many moms and I changed their life because of it. And that makes me feel like I did my job. Like I did, that part of my calling, right? We all have like different parts. I want to be able to help as many moms as I can. And one thing that I'm doing is I'm working on a sleep training course that parents will be able to do themselves so that they can have me in their back pocket.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story. Thanks for sharing your insights and the impact that you have on so many moms out there. Ah, what a great episode. Thank you for being here. I truly, truly appreciate you. I'd love for you to tap 5 stars and let me know what resonated. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under my name, Devora Goldberg. That's where I give you more content. That's where we're able to engage even further. Until next episode, stay safe and be well.